Not very long ago, I nearly killed my stepsister. Don't worry, I had a reason. Oh yes, my name is Amanda, and here's my story. It all started when I entered high school. New building, unknown students around me, new teachers, new classes. The period of adaptation to my new life began, and I was equal parts excited and nervous. And it just so happened that I was rude with one of my new teachers. I don't know how it happened. I swear. I just did not hear him talking to me, and when he made a kind of a joke about it, I replied in a very rude way. When the class was over, I approached him and said that I was sorry, but he turned out to be pretty narrow-minded. Once, I forgot the book that I needed for his class. He noticed it and, of course, asked nobody else but me to read out loud from it. I just started to think of how I could justify my forgetfulness when suddenly help came from the table next to me. A girl who was sitting there handed me her book and said, "Thank you very much for lending it to me." I quickly played along with this, like it was my book. The teacher had to bite his tongue, and I read aloud really well. After class, I talked to the girl who helped me out. Her name was Rose. We didn't necessarily become close friends, but she became one of those people who I liked to talk to at school. We helped each other with our studies. We stopped to chat in the halls, and we even sat together in the cafeteria. I liked Rose, and I can say that she has helped me a lot to adapt to my new surroundings. After that, my life was peaceful and calm, before my mother struck me with the news that somebody had proposed to her. You see, my mother's kind of old, and I did not know that she was dating somebody. He never brought her flowers, nor did they go to the movies together. It was just that my mother met a man, they fell in love with each other, and since they were both adults, they decided to move toward a serious relationship right away. I didn't object. My father moved to another state after their divorce, and we did not see much of each other. So I didn't have anything against having a stepfather. My mother made a festive dinner so that we could all meet. And I liked my mother's new partner. He was a calm and kind person, and I thought that he had a lot in common with my mother. He also had a daughter about my age. She was supposed to join us a couple of hours after dinner, and I couldn't wait to meet her. I was the only child in the family, and I thought it would be very cool to have a stepsister, especially a grown-up sister who I could become friends with, and there was no need to look after her, like what usually happens when you have little kids in the family. You can imagine my surprise when Rose appeared at the door. Yes, she was my mother's partner's daughter. I was extremely surprised and even happy to see her. As soon as Rose entered the living room, I rushed to hug her, but for some reason she stepped back and even gave me the stink eye. For the rest of the evening, she was not at all the Rose I knew from school. She was quiet and obviously in a bad mood. I did not know what was going on. I was positive that she would have also been happy with this coincidence. So the next day, I began to look for Rose at school, but she seemed to be avoiding me. She did not even show up in the cafeteria, probably guessing that I would try to catch her there. Rose just completely stopped talking to me, and of course, I took offense. She had no reason to do this to me. However, when Rose and her father moved into our house, I was determined to build a good relationship with her for the sake of my mother. And trust me, Amanda was a very good girl, but Rose went wild. Not openly so that I would have been able to blame her and ask her for her father's help, but she spoiled things for me, and even more for my mother. She literally did not talk to us, did not eat dinner with us, and actually, she hardly left her new room. In addition, Rose began to mess with me. For example, she ruined my clothing twice when it was her turn to do the laundry. The first time, she mixed my white clothes with the colored ones and added a lot of color enhancer, which meant I had no white clothes anymore. The next time, Rose messed with the temperature and drying cycle, and my jeans shrank 2 sizes. Of course, these were small things, not even worth mentioning, but before all that, Rose looked like a mentally sane girl. It was even worse at school. Rose tried really hard to ruin my reputation. My stepsister spread a rumor that I had a habit of stealing small things from time to time. There was no proof, of course, but I noticed that my classmates became tense in my presence and kept an eye on their belongings. Also, Rose constantly called me out in the class of that teacher that didn't like me. She'd just wait for the right moment when I was not prepared for class and helped him to make a fool of me. What a shame. But I swallowed all that. My patience broke when Rose turned over a dish full of spaghetti with sauce on my mother, allegedly by accident. I decided then to cut off any attempts to build a relationship with her. My mother and stepfather could not pretend not to notice Rose's behavior. So, well, I accidentally overheard that they were going to break up. Then I just went crazy. I caught Rose in the hallway and forcefully brought her to my room where I pushed her against the wall. I was ready to literally strangle her. I was very, very mad, even rudely grabbing Rose's shoulders, and I shook her, demanding an explanation. Rose seemed ready to fight, but suddenly she just burst into tears. All my anger vanished at that moment, and then Rose told me everything. It turned out that her parents had not divorced like mine did. Rose's mother died several years ago, and Rose missed her very much and could not accept that she was gone. And even though she understood that her father did not have to bury himself alive and spend the rest of his life mourning his late wife, the thought of some other woman next to him, well, it nearly killed her. She tried to calm herself down, thinking that it would happen sometime much later. But when she learned suddenly, as I had, about the fact that her dad was going to get married, she hated my mother and me from that moment on, and just couldn't do anything about it. She saw only one solution for herself: to get away from our family. She had an aunt in another town who lived alone, and who could have accommodated her, but her father would not agree to let his little Rose live so far away from him. You know, this conversation helped me to see Rose from another angle. Of course, I didn't approve of what she had done, but I tried to imagine how would I have behaved if I were her, and I can't say for sure that I wouldn't have had similar feelings. Maybe Rose should have moved away, and then everything would have been fine. I talked to my mother right after that, and together we convinced her husband that he should let Rose go. And when Rose was getting inside her taxi to leave, she hugged my mother and me for the first time. What do you think? Does awful behavior always mask serious drama? Tell me your thoughts in the comments and share my story with your friends.